Welcome to episode 25 of the Rescued by Dragons podcast, Tales of the Brunch Club, a fantasy fiction podcast inspired by a weekly homebrew Dungeons & Dragons campaign. My name is JP Black, and in the D&D campaign the story is based upon, I play Drusilla Gallanoodle, a cleric of the Raven Queen. Now I invite you to picture yourself in a cozy, torchlit tavern, ale in hand, gathered around a table with your closest comrades, waiting to hear the next chapter in Tales of the Brunch Club. But first, a quick recap of our previous episode. In episode 24, the Brunch Club returned to Elnor to collect the bounty on the two hill giants. They then sold the hill giant penises they used as proof of their kills to a local alchemist. Drusilla was approached by a messenger inviting them to a fancy gala thrown by the widowed Tyrell to take place the next evening. They met a gnome jeweler named Nedna, who told them the necklace they found in the woods was worth 2,000 gold pieces. Salas made a date with Nedna's grandson, Tuft, for later that night. With a few hours to kill before Salas's date, the women decided it was time for a spa day and dragged Vorjon along. And now, episode 25, Spa Day. The Brunch Club walked through the doors of Puddle Rock Spa into a well-appointed lobby. Tall, potted plants alternated with comfortable-looking chairs along the walls. There were fountains on either side of an ornately carved wood counter with gold leaf decorating the handsome scrollwork. Ethereal flute music seemed to be playing softly all around them. "Wow, this place is fucking fancy," said Diesa, still tipsy from the jug of wine she drank during lunch. A tall, broad-shouldered woman smiled at them. "Hello," she greeted them. "My name is Miriam. Are you here for our services today?" "Hell yeah, spa me," said Diesa enthusiastically. "Yes," said Drusilla, stepping in front of Diesa and walking to the counter. "We have a free afternoon, and we are wondering what services you have." "For all 5 of you?" Miriam asked, looking at Vorjon with an expression of doubt on her face. "Yes, all 5 of us," Drusilla answered. Miriam's face brightened. "Well," she began, "if you have the entire afternoon, you can partake in all of our services and still have time to relax in our exclusive enchanted rain room." "What are your services?" asked Alora. "We have the best masseuses and masseurs in Elnor," Miriam said with pride. "Our hair salon is excellent, and we were the first spa in the city to offer enchanted manicures." "That sounds excellent," said Drusilla. "We'll take all the services and the rain room." Miriam led them through an inner door into another room. While the fountains and music helped mask the busy street noise of Elnor on the other side of the lobby doors, the sounds of the city completely disappeared when Miriam shut the door of this new room behind them. The room was large, clean, and lined with cedar paneling. There were several cozy-looking chairs with end tables arranged in conversational semicircles throughout the room. The cedar walls had several doors, which led to dressing rooms where they could change into robes and store their gear. Vorjon struggled to take off his armor in the small room. When he stepped out, the 4 women were already lounging in the chairs, sipping mimosas. Salas and Diesa had the hems of their robes pulled up and tucked under their terry cloth belts so they wouldn't drag on the floor. Alora and Drusilla's robes fit them perfectly. "Oh my," Salas said when she saw Vorjon. Drusilla, Alora, and Diesa turned and laughed at the sight. His robe was stretched tight at the shoulders and wide open on his chest. The belt barely fit around his waist and was tied in a small square knot, the loose ends barely showing. A towel under the tight belt served as a loincloth to hide his privates. "Come on, Vorjon," Salas teased him. "You've been tossing around giant dicks all morning. Don't tell me you're shy now." "That was different," said Vorjon. "They weren't mine." "Maybe the size comparison's making him feel self-conscious," said Drusilla. "Does your dick have scales?" Diesa asked before downing the rest of her mimosa. Ew, said Alora. It's probably why you don't see any half-dragonborns anywhere. Can we change the subject, please? Urged Drusilla. I'm trying to find my happy place. Changing subject is fine with me, said Vorjon as he sat down carefully to keep himself covered. He quickly drank the mimosa that was waiting for him. Miriam brought them another round of mimosas and asked them what kind of massages they wanted. We offer relaxation, deep tissue, and detox, she told them. Diesa will have the detox, they all said in unison. When the rest of the women picked their massages, Miriam asked Vorjon, "And for you, sir?" "I don't mean to offend you," he began cautiously, "but do you have anyone on your staff strong enough to give deep tissue massage to dragonborn scouts?" Miriam smiled. Vorjon thought her smile looked mischievous. It made him slightly nervous. "Oh, I have just the monsieur for you. Don't you worry." She called out in a louder voice, "Barry, you've got a customer." A set of double doors at the far side of the room swung open. The hulking form of an 8-foot-tall, 4-armed, gorilla-like creature filled the doorway, and it stooped low to fit under the door jamb. "Holy crap," Alora laughed. "It's a Giralon. Vorjon, you are so dead." "Barry, this is Vorjon," Miriam said, introducing the dragonborn. "He wants the smash and fracture." "Wait, the what?" said a startled Vorjon. "Okay," Barry replied. "Did he sign the waiver?" "Oh, I'm sure he'll be fine," Miriam said nonchalantly. "Waiver?" Vorjon whimpered. "Come on, Cupcake," the Gorillion said, as he picked up Vorjon and tossed him over his shoulder like a bag of potatoes. "Barry's gonna take real good care of you." "Oh man," said Salas. "He's not coming back." Miriam paired the remaining Brunch Club members with their massage partners. "When you're all done, you can relax in the rain room until your hair appointment," she told them. Salas was the first one done with her massage. She felt relaxed and limber while she followed her monsieur into the rain room. Salas paused in the doorway for a moment to let her brain fully comprehend the sight before her. The door did not open to a room. It opened to what looked like an ancient elven forest. Trees dotted grassy meadows crisscrossed with flowing streams and smaller shallow brooks. Clouds of steam floated through the air. The sound of rain was the only thing she could hear, even though it was not raining in the room. There were a few people around that she could see. Most of them were laying in the grass or gliding back and forth lazily on swinging benches that hung from the large tree branches. Salas noticed no one was talking to each other. Paper lanterns filled with what looked like fireflies floated slowly through the air, providing the only source of light. Despite the lack of bright light, it looked as though there were acres of forest to explore. "Wow," Salas whispered. "We hear that a lot," the monsieur said. "Feel free to explore. You'll be notified by a sending spell when it's time for your hair appointment." Salas stepped into the room. She turned to thank the monsieur, but no sound left her lips. "Once I close the door," he told her, "the only sound you'll hear is the rain." Salas nodded as he closed the door. She looked around at the forest, absorbing its tranquility. She wanted to explore, but decided to sit by a small stream near the door and wait for her friends. Alora was the next to arrive, followed by Drusilla and Diesa. The rogue was walking much steadier now, and her eyes seemed more focused. "When they say detox, they mean detox," Salas heard her tell Drusilla before the door shut and muted their voice. They laid on the grass with their feet in the water. They listened to the rain and let the stream wash over their feet. They lost all sense of time, but started to feel like they had been waiting for Vorjon for a very long time. Alora stood up. She made a walking gesture with her first 2 fingers, telling the others she was going to explore the rain room. They nodded, but did not get up to join her. They heard the door open and looked over to see Vorjon and Barry. The giant Giralon hugged the dragonborn tightly. It appeared to wipe tears from its eyes. "Thank you for everything, Vorjon. That really helped," he said in an earnest voice. Vorjon reached up and patted him affectionately on the shoulder. "Have faith, my friend," he told Barry in an optimistic tone. "I'm sure you will see her again soon. It was a pleasure to meet you." Barry smiled, wiped another tear from his eye, then closed the door behind the Dragonborn. Salas, Drusilla, and Diesa stared at him with astonished expressions on their faces. Salas mouthed the words, "What was that?" Vorjon waved his hand in the air to indicate it was nothing and joined them on the bank of the stream, placing his feet in the water. They couldn't tell how much time they sat there, enjoying the steamy air and the sound of rain all around them. Eventually Vorjon looked at his companions and mimed shooting a bow and arrow, asking where Alora was. They all shrugged and stood up to go find her. They walked in the direction they saw Alora go earlier. Diesa spotted her first. She was standing up, swaying back and forth, staring at one of the glowing paper lanterns which hovered a few feet above her. They approached her. Vorjon tapped her on the shoulder and waved. She turned around slowly and smiled. Her pupils were so large there was only a sliver of iris visible around them. She turned back toward the hovering lantern and began swaying again. The others looked at each other with quizzical looks. They stared at the lantern, trying to see what was so interesting about it. They saw nothing. Each of them heard their own names spoken to them telepathically, followed by the words, "It is time for your hair appointment. Please proceed to the salon." Alora did not seem to hear the message from the sending spell, or she was choosing to ignore it. Drusilla and Vorjon took her by the arms and led her away. Whenever they passed beneath one of the glowing lanterns, Alora's eyes followed it until it was well behind her. When they finally exited the rain room and could be heard, Sala said, "What is wrong with you?" "Alora," Vorjon said, "are you okay?" Alora looked at the Dragonborn for a moment, smiled, then stared at one of the sconces on the hallway wall. She walked toward it. "Lamp," she said. Yeah, lamp," agreed Diesa. "Lamp," Alora said, slowly, almost reverently. "All right, lamp lady," said Drusilla, taking her arm again. "Let's go get your hair done." When they got to the salon, they sat Alora down in a chair. Her gaze floated back and forth between the lanterns and candles in the room. Miriam was there to greet them. "Do you know what's wrong with our friend?" Salas asked Miriam. "We found her like this in the rainforest," said Drusilla. "Oh dear," Miriam said. "Looks like she got a hold of some moon dust." "Moon dust?" Vorjon asked. "It's a drug made from the pollen collected off of a specific kind of moth. It makes you feel very relaxed and attracted to bright lights," Miriam told them. "It's a popular party drug among Elnor's younger citizens." Seeing the look of concern on her customers' faces, she added, "It's perfectly harmless. It usually lasts 6 to 8 hours. "Who gave you the drugs?" Diesa asked Alora. "Cute guy in the forest," Alora replied dreamily, never taking her eyes off of one of the lights in the room. "Nothing we can do about it now," Drusilla said. "Let's get her in a chair." Miriam told them that the enchanted hairstyles and manicures would last for 48 hours and encouraged them to get as creative as they wanted. Salas had her bright red hair pulled back tight halfway across her head. Then it fanned out long and wide behind her like billowing flames. Each of the sorceress's thumbnails was painted with a miniature representation of her, made of little squares. The image moved and shot firebolts from its hands, which sailed across each finger until exploding on her pinky nails. Drusilla got hair extensions, lengthening her hair to her waist. The stylist enchanted it to have it continuously billow, as though being blown by a gentle breeze, even indoors. She got a raven head painted on each middle nail with black wings which stretched out over her other nails and flapped up and down in perfect synchronization. When the stylist asked Alora what she wanted for her hair and nails, she simply replied, "Lamp." She gave Alora a fancy beehive hairdo with an enchanted glowing gem set in the middle. Each fingernail was decorated with a lantern and a light that flickered like real flames. Since Vorjon had no hair, his stylist used a paste, wool cloth, and cotton cloth to polish his scales until they shined brightly. A stylized image of the dragon god, Bahamut, glided across his nails from one hand to the other. Alora momentarily took her eyes off one of the lamps to look at Vorjon's gleaming scales. "Shiny," she said. Diesa got purple nails and an updo, which was held in place by a dagger. After their hair and nails were done, Miriam told them they had an hour remaining on their appointment and could finish it in the rain room if they wanted. "Hey, Alora, want to go show me who gave you the moon dust?" Diesa asked as they headed to the rain room. "Sure," said Alora. She took off her robe, handed it to the dwarf. "Let's go," she said, walking naked down the hallway. The rest followed. They walked around the rain room for about 20 minutes. Alora pointed to a very handsome man sitting cross-legged atop a grassy mound. His head was tilted back and his mouth was open slightly. He stared, unblinkingly, at a lantern hovering above him. Scattered around the hill were several other people sitting or lying down, staring upwards, also transfixed by the floating lanterns. Drusilla smiled and winked at her companions as if to say, "Watch this." She conjured 4 glowing orbs of light and made them circle above the moondust-infected people. Their heads moved in circles, following the floating orbs. Diesa made a motion with her hands, telling Drusilla to move the lights away from the hill. As Drusilla did this, the people all turned around to follow them with their eyes. When all of them were looking away, Diesa snuck up on the moondust dealer and slipped her hand into his robe pocket. He never noticed she was there. Drusilla left 3 floating orbs above the group and used the other to help coax Alora back towards the exit. Before they reached the door, Sala stopped and pointed to an area of the room that was thick with steam. Behind the cloud, they could just make out the form of some kind of creature. As they got closer, they could see it was sitting on top of a pedestal about 15 feet off the ground. It was a winged, impish beast, about the size of a gnome. It was chained to the pedestal by one of its feet. It opened its mouth and exhaled a large cloud of steam over their heads. It exhaled another steam cloud at seemingly random intervals. The creature looked down at them. Even though it looked like a devilish goblin with long ears and a pointed hooked nose, they could see a sad expression on its face and the look of hopelessness in its eyes. Drusilla felt bad for the pathetic creature, but knew she should find out more about it before she decided if she should help it. When they returned to the dressing rooms, they found their clothes had been washed and pressed. Their armor, shields, and weapons were clean and polished. "What was the creature chained up to the pedestal in the rain room?" Drusilla asked Miriam as she paid for their spa afternoon. "That's a mephit," Miriam told her. "Elementals with nasty dispositions. Fortunately, we've been able to retain them and put them to good use." "The one we saw looked sad," the cleric said. "Don't let them fool you," Miriam said, with no trace of empathy. "They'll burn your face off if given a chance. But they are looked after. We treat them well, as long as they behave." Drusilla was not satisfied with the answer, but decided not to ask about it further. The refreshed and relaxed group left the spa and headed for the Elfsong Tavern to get dinner before Salas's date with Tuft. Alora sat between Vorjon and Drusilla. She held her hands up to her face. Her palms were faced outward so she could stare at the glowing lanterns on her fingernails. She held one hand in front of Vorjon. "Look, lamps," she told him. "Yes, very nice, Alora," Vorjon humored her. She held her hand in front of Drusilla's face. "Look, lamp." Salas waved when she saw Tuft enter the tavern. He smiled when he saw her, but his smile faded slightly when he noticed the rest of the brunch club was also there. "Hi," he said when he approached the table. "I didn't know you were all gonna be here." "Don't worry," Vorjon said reassuringly.
We are just finishing our dinner. We won't intrude.
Salas stood up.
No need to rush. We'll go find our own table. Good night, guys. Don't wait up,
she said with a wink as she led Tuft away by the hand. The Brunch Club watched as Salas and Tuft sat at a small table on the other side of the tavern, out of earshot from them. What do you think they're talking about? Drusilla asked.
None of your business, said Vorjon.
They watched Salas and Tuft stand up and head for the door. They haven't even had a drink yet, said Drusilla. Where do you think they're going?
Probably somewhere to fuck, said Diesa.
I'm going to follow them, Drusilla said as she stood up.
Leave them alone, said Vorjon. She's a grown gnome. She can take care of herself.
Drusilla had already left the table and was headed out the door. What do moths do in the dark? Said Alora, staring at her fingernails. Drusilla followed Salas, using all the tricks of stealth she had learned from watching Diesa. She kept her breathing slow and quiet. She walked when they did, so the sound of their own footsteps would mask hers. She kept to the shadows, confident she would be hidden in the darkness, like a raven in the night. Why is your friend following us? Tuft asked Salas.
I have no idea,
Salas said apologetically. She's really loud, he said. Salas called Pip to her. He landed on her shoulder.
Go poop on Drusilla,
she commanded. Fuck yeah, Pip said happily and flew off toward the cleric. The snowy white pygmy owl was easily visible against the night sky, and Drusilla was able to sidestep his payload. Hey, he almost got my clean armor, Drusilla yelled at Salas.
Go home, Drusilla. You don't have to act like our mom every night,
Salas shouted back. Drusilla huffed and trudged back to the tavern. Salas and Tuft walked back to his jewelry store, in which he and his grandmother lived above. Tuft unlocked the door and let her in. Would you like some tea? He asked, while relocking the door. When he turned around for her answer, she surprised him by wrapping her arms around his neck and pulling him close for a long, slow kiss.
Later, she said. Right now I want you to show me your bedroom.
Okay, Tuft grinned happily.
Just don't mess up my hair,
said Salas as she followed Tuft up the stairs. Our tale will continue next week in episode 26. Episode 25 was written by Dominic White and based on a Dungeons & Dragons campaign created by our Dungeon Master, Brian Mesmer. Valuable contributions to the story were adapted by the role-playing of Bethany Powers, who plays Diesa, J.P. Black, who plays Drusilla, Liz Raychard, who plays Alora, Anna Flemke, who plays Salas, Dominic White, who plays Vorjon, and Brian Mesmer, who plays everyone else. Ambience and effects used with permission by Michael Gelfi. If you enjoyed this podcast, please help us out by sharing it with your friends. We'd appreciate it. More information about Rescued by Dragons and ways to support this podcast can be found at rescuedbydragons.com. You can also follow us on Instagram at Rescued by Dragons and on Twitter at Rescued Dragons. Thank you for listening, and please join us next week to find out, along with the rest of us, what happens next.